Okay. Today is our second class. Today is our second class concerning what happens after death. Last time we discussed the initial stages after we leave the physical body, that we discover that we have still some kind of body, that the appearance of this body may change depending on at what age of our life we focus on. So we could be at the age that we died, or at the age that we left our body, or at an earlier age. That we can travel instantaneously by just thinking of anyone or any place, we automatically appear there. We can see and hear the physical world, but generally cannot be seen or heard, although there are people with psychic sensitivities who can, but most people cannot. We can pass through matter, and in general we cannot handle matter in any way. Then we said that the next step is that we are greeted by loved ones or by beings of light or guardian angels who help us go through the review of our lives, in which we review our life, we determine the moments in which we were loving or conscious, the moments in which we were not loving or not conscious, and this doesn't have a sense of guilt or shame. It just has a sense of objectively discovering what we have learned and what we have not learned. Then we began to discuss how the soul then begins to exist in a realm or in a dimension or in a reality which is analogous with the thoughts and the emotions which this soul has developed in its series of lifetimes. In fact, we finished up last time by reading the experience of Walter Cohen, who had died and come back to life and experienced not only the review of his immediately previous life, but also of his past lives. And that after that, we then become aware in general of the contents of our minds. So let us read some excerpts about that. It is not necessary to suppose that all the dead in the intermediate state experience the same phenomena, any more than all the living do in the human world or in dreams. This is from the Tibetan Book of the Dead. The deceased human being becomes the sole spectator of a marvelous panorama of hallucinatory visions. Each seed of thought in his consciousness content comically revives, and he, like a wonder-struck child watching moving pictures cast upon a stream, looks on unaware, unless previously an adept in yoga or in meditation, of the non-reality of what he sees. So the greatest asset that we can take with us is the knowledge that whatever I experience is my creation. This is true here also. This is true when we're in the body, but as you all have experienced, it's much more true in the dream state, and because the after-death state is very similar to the dream state, it's very much true there. At least here in physical reality, matter slows down our imagination. If we're well balanced, we don't think that a rope is a snake, or that a person is a refrigerator, or that I can fly. But in dreams, this can happen very easily. So in the after-death state, my thoughts become my reality. And this is heaven, and this is hell. There's no such place as heaven, there's no such place as hell. They are personal realities, which are simply the function of the contents of my mind. If I'm at peace with myself, I create a very heavenly reality. If I'm not at peace with myself, I'm at war with myself, if I'm still full of desires and anger and bitterness, then I will create this reality after death. Let's see what Seth says about this. Even a belief in a time of judgment is a useful framework in many instances, for while there is no punishment meted out in your terms, the individual is then prepared for some kind of spiritual examination and evaluation. Those who understand thoroughly that reality is self-created will have the least difficulty. Those who have learned to understand and operate in the mechanics of the dream state will have the great advantage. A belief in demons is highly disadvantageous after death, as it is during physical existence. A systemized theology of opposites is also detrimental. That is, opposites of good and evil. If you believe, for example, that all good must be balanced by evil, then you bind yourself into a system of reality that is highly limiting and that contains within it the seeds of great torment. In such a system, even good becomes suspect because an equal evil is seen to follow it. The God versus devil, angels versus demons, the gulf between animals and angels, all of these distortions are impediments. So it's in what Seth is saying here, that it's important to realize that there is only good. There is only this one creative, conscious power in the universe. And that what we call evil is just a distortion of this energy. There is no, if we believe in evil beings, in demons or devils, we will create them. As I have seen so many people create them in physical life. By believing in these things, we create. Our reality is what we create with our belief system. So generally, it's much better just to believe that all is divine, that all is a creation of the divine, and that there can be, in reality, no evil. There can be ignorance, and ignorance can lead to evil actions, but there can be no evil beings, because no beings are created from some other source. All beings are expressions of the divine. Now let's see what Yorgos Meletis, the theologian, the Greek Orthodox theologian, says about hell and heaven. He says, Saint Gregory of Nyssa explains, do not think of Hades as a place, but rather as a state of bodiless life without precise form. Saint John of Damascus characterizes it as a mental place, not a physical place, not a place where people go, a mental place, precisely because the bodiless soul is formless and therefore is not encased in the body, but rather it is contained in the intellect. As soon as the soul leaves the body, it enters into the so-called intermediate state, which is the same word which the Tibetan Buddhists use, the intermediate, the bardo, intermediate state. This is the period preceding the visiting of the dead and the final judgment. During this period, the soul pre-experiences the good and evil according to its way of living and ending of its life on the earth. So we see that the same message is given by all the religions concerning this after-death state. Now, according to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, they separate this experience into days. That is, they have the same 40-day period in which they pray extensively, intensively for the soul. And it's the same 40-day period in Christianity. And they say that the first 7 days, the soul will be experiencing the result of its positive thought forms. And then, for 7 days, it will be experiencing the results of its negative thought forms, of its negative emotions. Now, of course, these number of days is relative, because as we have said, an advanced soul can go through these processes very quickly and even instantaneously if he's detached. But if it's like us normal people, and we're very much attached to our emotions and our feelings and our beliefs, it may take a longer period of time. But the Tibetan Book of the Dead clarifies that all of these visions, all of these realities which we experience are just the creation of our thought processes as our dreams. They are not reality. The only ultimate reality there is the light. And so one is suggested that one focus on the light, or focus on a particular form of God or the name of God when one leaves the body. So rather than being focused on what our relatives are doing on the earth and whether anybody came to our funeral or not, or they forgot us completely, or what's happening with our house or with our wife or with our children, or rather than focusing on the realities that we are creating, it's suggested to us that we just focus on the light or on God and move out of this whole level of existence and unite with the highest possible level. Concerning the concept of heaven and hell, we have from Iqbal, from Islam, the following statement. Man creates his own reward and punishment. There is no such thing as heaven and hell. Heaven and hell, asserts Iqbal, are states, not localities. Their descriptions in the Quran are visual representations of an inner fact, that is, character. So heaven and hell have to do with our character, and they exist in this physical life as they exist when we leave. People are in hell here on the earth, and people are in heaven. Well, few people are in heaven here on the earth. Most people are in hell. I always say this is hell, but you can achieve a state of peace and happiness if you work on it. Also, we remember the words of Christ, according to Luke chapter 17, verse 20. The kingdom of God does not come in such a way as to be seen. No one will say, look, here it is, or there it is, because the kingdom of God is within you. So it's not a place. It's a state of consciousness. Now, Socrates also agrees with this, and he also agrees that what will happen to the soul after this examination will depend on the character. Let's see what he says. On the other hand, if the soul left the body polluted and unpurified, and contaminated with desires unfulfilled and pleasures unsatisfied, it will inevitably be weighed down and was likely to cruise about restlessly among tombs and graves. Okay? So what happens is, if this spirit, this soul which is leaving the body, can't let go of attachments that it has to people, to houses, to things, to experiences, it can very well become entrapped in this astral state in which it doesn't move on to experience the death of the mind and the personality, and so it can't reincarnate. It can't have contact with the earth to satisfy its desires without dying, and so it's trapped. It could be trapped 500 years, 1,000 years in this state, a very attached soul. There are helpers there. There are beings there to help the soul realize its condition and to let go and to continue. But just as here on the physical level one can ignore help, one can ignore help also there. Now, then the soul has the possibility, according to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, to go to various lokas or realms or realities. But this also is temporary process. There are 6 lokas. There's the Deva Loka, which is the heavens where the gods are. There's the Ashura Loka, which is supposedly those fallen angels. There's the human Loka. There's the Loka of the lower human beings, according to the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Then there are supposedly the ghosts. And then there is those who are lost after the death, after their own death. They're lost in this wandering. But all of these lokas are temporary. and eventually the soul frees from that and continues with its evolutionary process. Let's read another section from Seth. Certain images have been used to symbolize such a transition from one existence to another, and many of these are extremely valuable in that they provide a framework with understandable references, so that when the soul leaves, he's waiting to see certain things and knows what to do. The crossing of the river Styx is one, the ancient Greek idea. The dying expected certain procedures to occur in a more or less orderly fashion. The maps were known beforehand. At death, the consciousness hallucinated the river vividly. The consciousness of the dying person would see this river because they expected to see this river. Relatives and friends were already there, already dead, entered into the ritual, which is a profound ceremony also on their parts. The river was as real as any you know, as treacherous to a traveler alone without proper knowledge. Guides were there at the river to help such travelers across. It does not do to say that such a river is an illusion. The symbol is reality, you see. The way was planned. Now that particular map is no longer generally in use. The living do not know how to read it. Christianity has believed in a heaven and a hell, a purgatory and a reckoning. And so at death, to those who believe in these symbols, another ceremony is acted. So having an idea in our minds of what we're going to encounter helps us go through that. So knowing that we will be met by loved ones or by beings of light, we will pay attention to them. We won't ignore them. Knowing that we're going to go through an evaluation of our lives helps us to go through it more relaxed way, in a clear way, and use that, you see. A belief in hellfires can cause you to hallucinate hell conditions. A belief in a stereotyped heaven can result in hallucination of heavenly conditions. You always form your own reality according to your ideas and expectations. This is the nature of consciousness in whatever reality it finds itself. Such hallucinations, I assure you, are temporary. Consciousness must use its abilities. The boredom and stagnation of a stereotyped heaven will not for long content the striving consciousness. There are teachers to explain the conditions and circumstances. You are not left alone, and therefore lost in mazes of hallucination. You may or may not realize immediately that you are dead in physical terms. If you believe, this is Seth again, all men are evil, you simply will not experience the goodness in men. You will be completely closed to it. They will in turn always show you their worst side. You will telepathically see to it that others dislike you, and you will project your dislike upon them. Your experience, in other words, follows your expectations. Now the same applies to after-death experience, and to the dream experience, and to any out-of-the-body encounters. If you are obsessed with the idea of evil, then you will meet evil conditions. If you believe in devils, then you will encounter these. As I mentioned earlier, there is greater freedom when consciousness is not physically directed. Okay? So I think we get the message that after we go through the evaluation, then we exist in a state of reality which is created by our level of consciousness. We may encounter other beings and co-create realities there with other beings who are working at the same frequency, with the same lessons or the same level of consciousness. Now what happens? Now, until now, everything that we have said, we have seen there has been a 100% agreement from all of the 12 sources. Now, 2 of those sources break off. And that is the traditional theological stance of Christianity and of Islam, and I would say of Judaism. Whereas all the other sources, Socrates, Theosophy, the Bailey work, Hinduism, Buddhism, and all the other sources say that the next step is reincarnation. So now we have two possibilities. With the traditional Christian, Judaic, Christian, and Islamic concept, the soul then waits for the day of judgment. It has no more chances. Which, if this is true, I think God's going to be pretty lonely in heaven, because I haven't met any perfect people. So unless some kind of leeway is given for who's going to get into heaven and who's not, it's very likely that no one is going to end up there. The second possibility, which we are given by the other religions, is that the soul gets another chance. It comes back, it creates a new mind, a new body, it lives another life, decides on what lessons it's going to work on in that life, and tries again to perfect itself. So we have two concepts here. The one concept is that you get one life, you get one chance, and then you just wait for the day of judgment. You can do nothing else but wait. And the second is that you come back and you continue this evolutionary process. Now, there are rumors and beliefs where people say that they believe that there was a lot about reincarnation in the Bible, or in the interpretation of the Bible, but was removed during a Holy Synod around 536 in Constantinople, when Justinian was the king at that time. And according to the Catholic Encyclopedia, which may be biased, it was a synod which was rather sinister, in which even the Pope was detained, put in jail or something like this. It was a time when there was a conflict between the two churches. And at that time, supposedly, I wasn't there, I don't know, I can't say anything for sure here, but supposedly some sections about reincarnation were removed from the Bible. But even though some sections have remained which can be interpreted in a way so as to believe in reincarnation. One section is where, first of all, the idea of karma, we must understand, is definitely in the Bible. It says that as you sow, so shall you reap. He who lives by the sword will die by the sword. This is obviously the law of karma. What you do will come back. When Christ heals the paralyzed man, he says, get up, walk, take your bed with you, your sins are forgiven. So he says he's making a direct relationship between his paralysis and his sin. So we see that the concept that my illness, my problems, is a result of something that I have done, that is the law of karma, is 100% a Christian concept. Now, the reincarnation, there are two sections here. First of all, well, I would say three. One is that we do not see that all people who live by the sword die by the sword. So we see many good people dying to us unjust deaths, and we see many unjust people living a fruitful life into an old age. So unless we say that, well, the payment for this will be in the afterlife, at least in this life, we don't see the law, as you sow, so shall you reap. We see it sometimes, and other times we don't see it. So one possible answer to this, well, the payment is in the afterlife. Another possible explanation is, well, it's in the next incarnation. Secondly, when Christ healed the blind man, his disciples asked him, was he born blind by his own sins or by his parents' sins? Of course, Christ's answer was neither. He was born blind in order to show the glory of God. That is, by my healing his blindness so that people would believe. But the question posed says that the apostles believed that he could have sinned before being born. So the question is, where could he have sinned before being born? The only possibility here is that he has lived previously. Okay? And the third one is, when they ask about Elias, they ask Christ, well, where is Prophet Elias? Prophet Elias was supposed to come again before you, the Messiah. And his answer was, he came and they did whatever they liked with him. And all understood that he was referring to John the Baptist. And so Christ is clearly saying that John the Baptist was an incarnation of Prophet Elias. Now, there might be some other kind of explanation for these words, but these sections could be interpreted as referring to reincarnation. On page 7 of the sheets that we have given you, we have some interesting quotations about reincarnation by Jesus, by Plato, by Hermes Trismegistus, by Albert Schweitzer, Benjamin Franklin, Goethe, Carl Jung, Tolstoy, Nietzsche, Giordano Bruno, Balzac, Thomas Huxley, and Henrik Ibsen. So these are some quotations which you might find interesting. I was surprised to hear that these people had said these things about reincarnation. So let's see about this time of choice. What does that say? Before the time of choosing, however, there is a period of self-examination, and your full history becomes available to you. You understand the nature of the entity, and you are advised by other portions of that entity more advanced than yourself. You will become aware of your other reincarnational selves, for example. There will be emotional ties with other personalities whom you have known in past lives, and some of these may supersede your relationships in the immediately past life. This is a meeting place for individuals from your own system also, however. That is, from people who are still alive. All necessary explanations are given to those who are disoriented. Those who do not realize that they are dead here are told of their true condition, and all efforts are made to refresh the energies and spirits. It is a time of study and comprehension. It is from this area that some disturbed personalities have those dreams of returning to physical environment. You may decide upon another reincarnation. You may decide to focus instead upon your past life, using it as the stuff of new experience, as mentioned previously, creating variations of events as you have known them, making corrections as you choose. Or you may enter another system of probability entirely, and this is quite apart from the reincarnational existence. You will be leaving all thoughts of continuity and time behind you. Some choose this rather than reincarnating, or rather as a study before a new reincarnation. These people are often perfectionists at heart. They must go back and create. They must right their errors. Then they use the immediately past life as a canvas, and with the same canvas they attempt to make a better picture. This is a mental and psychic exercise undertaken by many, demanding great concentration, and is no more hallucinatory than any existence. So what the soul can do is, it has three possibilities. It can reincarnate, it can play with the previous life, like as you might do in creative positive projection, visualize ourselves in the way that we have handled events in the past, and visualize ourselves handling those events differently now. So we're doing positive projection. But this does not constitute evolution. This is rehearsals. We can do this just as imagining in my mind that I'm able to show love to a person who I have not been able to show love to until now is not the lesson. It is a help. It prepares me for that. But the real evolution will take place when I can, in fact, in my physical body, show love to that person. So according to self, until we arrive at a certain level of evolution where we can leave this plane altogether, evolution takes place only when we are incarnated, and not between incarnations. We can rehearse, we can practice, we can prepare, but evolution takes place only in the physical body. According to Alice Bailey, when we leave the physical body, and after we go through the evaluation of our lives, the soul collects from that evaluation 3 seeds which hold the qualities of the physical body, of the energy body, and of the emotional body. These seeds are deposited in the causal body. They are added to the seeds, if you like, the characteristics or qualities from our previous incarnations, and then from that we take the material for our next life. How the physical body will be, what weaknesses, what strengths it will have, how the energy body will be, whether it have high energy, low energy, what emotions we will have. This is decided before we incarnate. Of course, in our life we have the chance to work on this and to overcome any limitations and to use any limitations for our growth process. For example, if we choose a body that can't see or cannot walk, this can be a great opportunity for spiritual growth because we are forced to develop inner power in this way. It is also said by Alice Bailey that the second death can take place in one of 3 ways. There is the death of the mind. For most people it takes place by the process of attrition, gradually peters out, the thinking process. By more advanced souls, they can repeat mantras and meditate in this bodily state so as to empty and to destroy the mind, so they can leave this mental body and continue with the evolutionary process. And the third way is by praying for higher powers to destroy the mind. So it can be through slow attrition, through meditation, or through prayer. So any soul who has developed these abilities will be in an advantageous state after death. Now the question is, one question which might come to mind is, where do these after-death states exist? Are they on Venus? Are they on Mars? Are they on the Sun? Seth's answer is that they exist nowhere in our physical dimension. That is another dimension. So just as in this room there are literally thousands of radio waves and television waves coexisting in the same room, because they don't take any space. I mean, you can't say, well, there's no more space for any waves in here. Waves don't take space. In the same way, those realities are here. It's not a movement to another place in our galaxy or in our solar system. It's a movement into another dimension. And they exist here, they exist everywhere. Right where we are now, there are other dimensions functioning simultaneously. Now, about choosing a new incarnation. Let us now go to Helen Wambach's hypnosis experiment, in which she hypnotized 750 people who she collected off the street in Chicago and Los Angeles for this psychological test. Not people specifically involved in this kind of spiritual work. And she hypnotized them in group settings, giving them a questionnaire to fill out afterwards. And one of the questions that she asked was, did you choose to be born, and did you have any help in choosing to be born? So let's hear some answers. Yes, I chose to be born, and there seemed to be a board or committee, a group of authorities to help me choose. I was not too anxious or interested in living this lifetime, but I knew I had something to do on this plane, something to accomplish. The whole feeling of birth seemed to be an annoying, unpleasant trip to accomplish something in this lifetime. I felt an urgency. Another case. When you asked if I chose to be born, I didn't want to, but I was convinced by a counselor that I needed to help with enlightenment. The man who helped me choose seemed to have a white beard and a cane and was a kind of spiritual guide. When you asked about the prospect of being born, I became clearly aware that I didn't want to and was very reluctant. I even knew that I had tried to abort while in the room. in the womb. So abortions don't take place only by women, they take place also by the soul coming in. Another case. Yes, I chose to be born. I had a very strong sensation of flowing from my expanded, dispersed self down into my physical center, and had a vision of it. I think someone helped me to choose, but if they did, it was prior to the space I experienced, because I felt my own pressure to enter physical reality. My feelings about the prospect of being born were positive, and I was impatient to begin. We must say that, according to most of the answers, this is an unusual case. Most souls don't want to get born. Another one. Yes, I chose to be born, but somewhat reluctantly. Others were helping me choose, and they seemed to be vague figures. Some were human shapes, and some geometric shapes. There was a general agreement among all of us that it was somehow necessary, but I felt pushed into it. Another case. Yes, I chose to be born. I was waiting to return. No one actually helped me choose, but an old man was with me while I was making the choice. My feeling about the prospect of being born was that I was waiting and anxious to see if the body would be okay this time. This experience was very strange for me. This woman who had this experience realized in the experience, in hypnosis, that she was the same soul who incarnated to the same parents as an earlier child who died after a few months. And so this is why she said, I was anxious to see if the body would be okay this time. And she came in, the body died, and the same soul came back as the next child. This is what she realized anyway in this hypnosis. Another case. Yes, I chose to be born, although I felt it was going to be a hassle. Someone helped me choose, someone more knowledgeable than I. My feelings about living the coming lifetime were that it was something that had to be done, like washing the floor when it's dirty. So what we can see is that no one wants to die and no one wants to get born. In general, we don't like to change states. If we're here, we don't want to leave. If we're there, we don't want to come. In general, we're never happy. Let's hear what Seth says about this. The time of choosing, that is, choosing of a new incarnation, is dependent upon the condition and circumstances of the individual following transition from physical life. Some take longer than others to understand the true situation. Others must be divested of many impeding ideas and symbols, as explained earlier. The time of choosing may happen almost immediately in your terms, or may be put off for a much longer period of time while training is carried on. The main impediments standing in the way of the time of choosing are, of course, the faulty ideas harbored by any individual. A belief in heaven or hell under certain conditions can be equally disadvantageous. Some will refuse to accept the idea of further work, development, and challenge, believing instead that conventional heaven situations are the only possibility. For some time they may indeed inhabit such an environment until they learn through their own experience that existence demands development, and that such a heaven would be sterile, boring, and indeed deadly. Then they are ready for a time of choosing. Others may insist that because of their transgressions they will be cast into hell, and because of the force of such a belief they may for some time actually encounter such conditions. In either case, however, there will always be teachers available, and they will try to get through these false beliefs. In the Hades condition, the individuals come somewhat more quickly to their senses. As those who are creating hell come more quickly to their senses. Their own fear triggers within themselves the answering release. Their need, in other words, is more quickly opens the way to inner doors of knowledge. Their state does not usually last long therefore, as the heaven state. So we see this in this physical reality, that when we are in the hell state, when we're unhappy, that forces us to direct our energies in the spiritual direction. Also, this interesting movie that's out, I Will Meet You in Paradise or something like that, what's it called? With Robin Williams. It shows a similar situation. Remember, it's a movie and they're trying to make these things seem like this, but his wife who commits suicide creates hell conditions. And he tries, as a soul, to go and take her out of these hell conditions. He tries to awaken her to the truth. This is the whole story, how she's going to get her out of the hell that she has created from committing suicide. So it's an interesting movie. Let's see what Seth says about suicides. Suicides, as a class, for example, do not have any particular punishment meted out to them, nor is their condition any worse than the others. They are treated as individuals. Any problems that were not faced in this life will, however, be faced in another one. This applies not only to suicides, however. A suicide may bring about his own death because he rejects his existence on any but highly specific terms chosen by himself. If this is the case, then of course he will have to learn differently, because we don't solve anything. When someone says to me, I'm thinking about suicide, I say to him, it's your right, but anything that you are trying to avoid, you will just meet again in the next life. And not only that, you will be adding to that the fact that you have created pain for many people around you. And there will be this new added karma. So you're not going to get away from anything. Whatever is unacceptable to you, you will have right in front of you when you come back. There's a very interesting poem by Jalaluddin Rumi, a Sufi. I died as mineral and became plant. I died as plant and rose to animal. I died as animal and was man. Why should I fear? When was I less by dying? Yet once more I shall die as man, to soar with angels blessed. But even from angelhood I must pass on. All except God doth perish. When I have sacrificed my angel soul, I shall become what no mind ever conceived. Oh, let me not exist, for non-existence proclaims in organ tones, to him we shall return. This one poem has all of the philosophy we have discussed this year. First of all, from mineral to plant, from plant to animal, from animal to human, and then to angel. And then he says, I cannot unite with God as long as I have individual existence. And so my non-existence as an individual is my unity with the divine. Now let's hear a few more reasons why people chose to come into incarnation. This is again from Helen Wambach's Hypnosis. Yes, I chose to be born, and I was helped in this choice by a council of souls. My feelings about the prospects of living the coming lifetime came through that I knew my parents needed me because they had lost a 15-month-old girl in a fire, so I felt eager to come to them. Another case. Yes, I chose to be born, but with reluctance. There seemed to be friends around me, and as I chose, saying, oh, come on, it will be good for you. My feelings about the prospect of living the coming lifetime were that there was lots of work ahead, especially work on my relationship with my mother. So you see, the soul comes for specific work. No, I didn't choose to be born. There was someone insisting that it was time that I to return. I felt very reluctant to live another lifetime because it was very pleasant on the cloud. But a voice was insisting that I needed additional experience. No, I didn't choose to be born. I had the feeling that something or someone controlled my birth, but I couldn't understand any more about it. I didn't want to go through another lifetime again, but I felt like I needed to learn to love. I felt like it was a recurring lesson that I had to come back again and again and again. No, I didn't choose to be born. It seems as though I tried to make more decisions and to be ready to teach or guide, but I needed help myself. When you asked if anyone helped me to choose, I became aware that there were two helpers who were quite determined that I come back and make more decisions and be ready to teach or guide in a time of stress to come. My feelings about the prospect of living a lifetime were that I didn't want to fulfill the duties of earth life. I liked being taught on another plane, and I wanted to avoid contact with other earthlings. And one last one. I was very resistant to the idea of choosing to be born, but I know I had to make the decision myself. My feelings about the prospect of living another lifetime were that it was really a drag. This surprises me because I love living so much. So this is an important one. This is not a projection of this person's unhappiness. This person is a happy person and loves living and was very surprised to see that before coming that he or she didn't want to. So let's just turn this over. Apodexia. Okay. So let's listen to the results of Helen Wambach's study. Of the 750 subjects, 81% chose to be born. 19% were unaware of any choice or had no clear answer. 59% felt the help of counselors. 26% felt enthusiastic about being born. 68% felt negative about being born. 64% felt that they chose their sex, to be male or female. But not one of the 750 people felt that their true self was male or female. They had no gender as souls, but they chose a specific gender upon incarnating. 87% knew people who were in this life in past lives. So they recognized people in this life as persons they were with in previous lives, 87%. 89% experienced separateness from the fetus, from the embryo, until the 6th month. Some experienced from the beginning. Some experienced upon birth. But 89% experienced separateness until the 6th month. 86% experienced the emotions of the mother before being born. And 90% found the death experience to be pleasant. And so what's the next step of this circle of life, as I call it? Birth. We started out with leaving the body, discovering our new body, going through the examination, meeting the beings of light or relatives, going through the examination, existing in a level of consciousness or in a reality dependent on the quality of our thoughts, of our causal body, and then, according to some groups, we just stay there and wait for the judgment day, and according to other groups, we decide on the new incarnation. So let's see what these people described in Helen Wambach's study about the birth experience. The birth canal experience for me was a slow torture. I had the feeling of being crushed. There was not enough room. There was pain and pressure. After I was born, I felt cold and there was too much light. There was pain, especially in my head and face. I was aware of other people's feelings. My mother had a feeling of relief from pain, but also some disgust. There was indifference on the part of all the hospital attendants, except for one warm-hearted nurse. Another case. In the birth canal, I was just next to the body. But when I was in it and then out of it, I could observe. After I was born, I felt wet, and I know I had a bloody forehead that was bruised. I was slow to realize that my head hurt. I was aware that someone in the room said I looked funny, but that somehow bothered me and would stay with me, even though I also heard them say I would be okay later. So these messages that the child gets even in the womb, but even on birth, remain in the subconscious for all the life unless one works on it. The birth canal experience for me wasn't smooth, but in jerks, surrounded by softness. It was almost unyielding, though. I remember the tremendous bursting desire to breathe and feel my limbs free, to stretch. After I was born, the first breath seemed to be burning and almost painful, and I was coughing and choking. Before being washed, my skin was burning and painfully being tightened by the drying amniotic fluid and itching. Unfortunately, I was scrubbed by some idiot with a horribly scratchy sponge. It was very cold in the delivery room. Everyone was quite aware of my mother's feeling about the birth. I kept hearing her say, "I don't want it, I don't want it." So this message will remain in that subconscious, unless, of course, she goes through some kind of catharsis and self-knowledge. When you asked about the birth canal, I felt very angry. I wanted to get out, and my mother doesn't want me to get out. I am kicking, fighting, screaming. After birth, I have relief, but I'm still upset. My thought was, so that's the place I wanted to get to so much. I was aware of other people's feelings after my birth. My grandmother was very nasty. I thought it was a snotty nurse, and then I realized it was my grandmother. So we can see that we've got it upside down. We're so happy when someone gets born, and we're so sad when they die, when the reality of the situation is exactly the opposite. We should be very happy for the souls that are getting free from the body limitation. And okay, we don't have to be sad about the souls coming into that limitation, but we should be accepting of both processes. I mean, birth is really the limitation of the soul. The soul doesn't want this. It's painful. Whereas death is a freedom. This doesn't mean that we should go out and commit suicide or help somebody die. It just means that we should be accepting and relaxed about both situations. We need to be born. We need to leave the physical body. It's a very natural process. We are evolving in this way. Now, we will talk about how we can help loved ones in this death process and how we can handle the death of loved ones next week. Now we will stop here. This is our second class. We have completed the description of what happens after death, completing the cycle with birth, if you believe in reincarnation, or else we're just waiting there for the day of judgment and see what's going to happen to us. And now we will move on to how we can prepare and be ready for our own death whenever that may happen. Okay? So we're going to close all the machines. You want to change cassettes. You can take a 5-minute break if you want to go to the toilet, if you want to get some water to drink or something. I wonder if someone can get me some water because my throat's going to dry up.